really want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Hello. Nope. I'm Mrs. NJ. Welcome to my world. So today I'm going to talk about Meyers Briggs, and I'm going to talk about Enneagram typing. A few years ago, I took a Meyers Briggs test as part of a professional development thing that I was doing. That is when I first found out that I'm an INFJ. Introverted, intuitive, feeling, judging. There's a lot of information out there about Meyers Briggs, so I'm not going to go really detailed into it. And it is a really good tool. I first started reading about INFJs, and I felt like a lot of things that I had been fighting about myself or that I didn't understand about myself started to kind of make sense a little bit more. So INFJs are the most rare type. I do feel kind of isolated and alone in the world, and that's because there really aren't that many other people like me out there. I probably wouldn't run into them because we're all so introverted. Their good qualities are they're creative, they're insightful and passionate, but they can also be really sensitive and private, and they burn out really easily. All things that I identified super strongly with. So I've spent a lot of time researching my type in relation to other types and trying to figure out how to leverage this information about myself to help improve my life. But ultimately, I didn't find a lot of resources that helped me to grow as a person. INFJs tend to be very self-aware. I would seek out a therapist. I felt like I could game the therapy really easily. It was really helpful during an acute season for me, just really needing somebody to talk to, going through postpartum depression. But beyond that, when I started really wanting to dig in and work through some self-discovery stuff, battling some disordered eating habits that I hadn't really recognized before, body dysmorphia. Ultimately, the therapist that I was seeing wasn't super helpful with that and ended up deciding to kind of pursue some self-growth on my own. So these are things that I was learning about myself, but I still didn't have a really clear direction as to how to channel these things. And I still felt like a lot of parts of myself were at the core just wrong. There was something wrong with me. I needed to fix it about myself. If these are character traits that I could have fixed, I would have fixed them a long time ago. If I could have changed them at the core of my being, I would have. I did not want to grow up feeling so socially awkward, so isolated, so melancholy. Now, if you're familiar at all with Enneagram, you've probably already figured out that I am an Enneagram type 4. Last week, a friend of mine posted something on her Instagram about a new Enneagram book she was reading. I hadn't really paid a lot of attention to Enneagram before. I had quite a bit of insomnia on Friday night, so I kind of spent the whole evening taking Enneagram tests and reading and figuring it all out. As somebody who's completely new to it, I'm going to kind of give my own summary and then talk a little bit about my type and where to go from here. There are 9 different types on the Enneagram. For me, I took a free quiz. It nailed my type immediately. And then I went and I read the type 4 personality profile. Oh my gosh, this is me. Like, this is dead on. Once you figure out your main type, then you can also have wings. And the wing means that you also share qualities with the type that is adjoining you on the outside of the Enneagram. For instance, I could either have a 3-wing or a 5-wing or balanced wings. The 3-wing is the aristocrat. The description for the 5-wing is the bohemian. I have literally been both of those people in different seasons of my life. There are times in my life when I've gotten really into learning about just like designer fashion. I've always had really expensive taste, always liked things that were really good quality. And as an adult, I've been able to channel that into being able to support things that I'm also passionate about, like ethical clothing production. But I've also been the bohemian. There have been times in my life when the biggest thing that I aspired to was to live in a van with nothing else but like a dog and a ukulele. Both of those resonated so strongly with me. So I was talking with my friend about it, and she said, oh, actually you can have balanced wings. And I feel like at this point in my life, that's kind of where I'm at. My main Enneagram type is 4, which is the individualist. And I'll read a little bit. 4s are self-aware, sensitive, and reserved. They are emotionally honest, creative, and personal, but can also be moody and self-conscious. Oh my gosh, yes. I am so self-conscious. My mom and grandma actually spent quite a bit of effort when I was a kid trying to get me to feel a little bit more confident around other people. And so my grandma would kind of coach me and we would role play having conversations with people, but I still get really self-conscious. I can be very self-confident, but it's a lot of work for me and it really makes me tired to play this dialogue in my head over and over again about how other people aren't seeing me the same way that I'm seeing myself, because I am always 100% of the time hating on myself and feeling so shameful and so guilty for no reason, but it's just this like false idea of who I am. A little bit more about type 4s. At their best, they are inspired and highly creative. They are able to renew themselves and transform experiences. I think one of my biggest passions in life is to create experiences. Just these like luxurious and unique and special, immersive times where people can come into it and just feel like they've been whisked away. A type 4's basic fear is that they have no identity or personal significance. Oh my gosh, I had never thought about it in these terms before, but that is absolutely right. I would say that my biggest fear is having no personal significance. And the basic desire is to find themselves and to create an identity. If you saw my first video, or if you've even seen me talking here at all, like, that is dead on. They want to express themselves and their individuality, to create and surround themselves with beauty, to withdraw to protect their self-image. When I first read about the type 4's inclination to withdraw in themselves, I was so relieved, because this isn't something that Meyers Briggs really talked a lot about. They talked a lot about being introverted and being alone, but they didn't talk about withdrawing kind of from an emotional standpoint, and that is totally something that I do. When I first discovered my Enneagram type, I was really excited. Not only is there other people like me out there, but all of these parts of myself are not broken pieces that I need to be trying to put back together. They are unique character traits that I need to be trying to figure out how to leverage. So instead of forcing myself to be social when I'm so just burnt out, I need to be just allowing myself to be withdrawn. Instead of trying to force myself to be what other people's view of happy is, it's okay for me to coexist with my melancholy and my grief. There has to be a purpose for why I was given these character traits. So I went from this initial excitement to just being so pissed off, like just angry. Because I'm not usually someone, at least not in my adult life, who is afraid to face up to my character flaws. Some other character traits of type 4 are dramatic and moody and self-absorbed. They're all definitely things that I am and can default to being, and not things that I like about myself. I started reading more and more about 4s and how essentially they are so wrapped up in being the most special that they never actually get anything productive done, which just made me so sad and so angry. Yeah, I know that about myself. I know that that's true. Now what? I don't understand why this type even exists. I do acknowledge the irony that I then became dramatic and self-absorbed about how dramatic and self-absorbed I am. Okay, so all of the other types seem to have these like really clear-cut paths in front of them. Then there's me. It's so frustrating because I do consider myself to be more empathetic, and I get really angry when people lack empathy and compassion for people who are hurting. But then I'm also somebody who needs all of this withdrawn, alone time, things that have me interacting with people all the time. I ultimately become even more self-absorbed and even more dramatic because I'm so tired. I'm just doomed. If I could have changed it, I would have a long time ago. I won't go into all of the details today about my spiritual life because that's really complex, but I will say, like, I started kind of getting angry and asking, like, why would God make me this way? I really absorb other people's emotional energy, and it's very hard for me not to. It's not something that I can just turn off. It's seriously like taking a sponge and like dropping it into a liquid of other people's emotional energy. I just suck it all up. And I even told my husband that. I was like, there's nothing good about my personality type. It's terrible. I hate it. I don't want to be a 4. I don't want to be an INFJ anymore. I do acknowledge the irony that I then became dramatic and self-absorbed about how dramatic and self-absorbed I am. So in your Enneagram, you have your main number, your wing or balanced wings, your growth pattern. You tend to grow towards one number or one behavior. When you're stressed, you go towards another behavior. When I'm stressed, I go towards being more of a type 2, which is labeled the helper. I become overly involved with helping other people. And I know for a lot of people and a lot of personality types, this is a really good way for them to get the focus off of themselves and things, but I do it in a really unhealthy way and burn myself out to where I can't help anyone, including myself. And if I am growing, I move in the direction of being more like a type 1 who is principled and has really thoughtful goals. I have definitely seen that play out in my life. When I'm going through a time of stress, I get really hung up on how all of my friends need me, and then when I'm growing, I can become a little bit more distant and logical about kind of what the path forward is. And then there's also tri-types. And tri-types have to do with your dominant patterns for certain functions of your life. For example, I am a 4-5-9 tri-type. What that means for me is that my head type is a 5, which is a very like logical, reserved, thinking type, and that's my head type. My heart type is 4, which is the individualist, the expressive, creative, wanting to be different. And then my gut type is a type 9. And the type 9 is the peacemaker. They tend to be really empathetic, reassuring, agreeable, and kind of complacent. All of that to say, even though I really was able to identify with a lot of these things, I also was having a really hard time seeing anything positive about my type or my stacking or my tri-type, even though they were completely dead on. I know that there's a lot of books and resources about Enneagram out there. Being true to my type, I am very individualist, so I wanted to figure out some of it on my own. I talked to my husband a little bit about it, and he reminded me how many 4s have leveraged their good qualities to do really amazing things for the world. People like Edgar Allan Poe, Bob Dylan would have bkahn classified as Enneagram type 4s from what we know of them. I think the common thread that I noticed between all of the other Enneagram type 4s listed, Frida Kahlo, Tennessee Williams, Amy Winehouse, Johnny Depp, Judy Garland, is that they really had kind of melancholy lives. They never had what looked like happiness from the outside, but it seems like they really fell into bad patterns from trying to fight the melancholy, from trying to escape it, find some kind of happiness somewhere else, to mimic the happiness that they saw other people having. I just keep being reminded of how there are so many verses in the Bible that talk about how close God is to people who grieve, the people who grieve with him and have that heart of empathy towards other people. Even though it's really hard for me to accept and identify good qualities in myself, I'm determined now to take and leverage these things that I'm learning about myself and use them to connect with people. Ultimately, I'd like to find a way to coexist with the melancholy. I'm not going to continue to hold myself to this standard that I am supposed to achieve the same kind of happy-go-lucky social happiness that other people find. When I have been in seasons where I spend multiple days a week in social settings, I end up really sick and burnt out. So instead, I hope to find ways to honor that part of myself and also really use it to help improve and learn more about my relationships. All that to say, I am really interested in learning more about my Enneagram type. So I feel like when people find out they're Meyers Briggs type, a lot of times they use it as a justification for just behaving badly. Like, well, this is just my type, like this is just my character. So I want to find ways to be able to communicate my needs and boundaries and honor those parts of myself while also moving forward with being helpful and successful in the world. So that's what I've learned about Enneagram so far. I hope that this inspires you to go and figure out your own Enneagram type, maybe take it with your partner or your friends or your family members, learn a little bit more about your own relationships, and find a way to leverage your good character qualities. Feel free to leave me comments. Do you like Enneagram types? Do you like personality quizzes? I found them to be really helpful for personal development and also to be a tool to bring me closer together with other people. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Be sure to subscribe and hit that little bell button that will notify you whenever I post a new video. I'll be here Tuesdays and Saturdays. Thanks for joining me again. Bye for now. It was so funny because I actually wrote in my journal a few days before I discovered Enneagram, why do I always rebel just for the sake of rebelling? And it says somewhere in the Enneagram profile for my type, rebels for the sake of rebelling. I'm so hungry.